بفرمایید دیان عزیز.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. As Hassan said, yesterday the Iran actually, the document that states what Iran has accepted or rejected as recommendations was issued. This is not a common process because you know that normally the countries that go under the Universal Periodic Review, they have to, at the end of the working group, so there is, you know, there's a 3-hour session with the delegation, and then a few days later, there is for 1 hour, the government normally, once it has met with the Troika and has spoken and has looked at all the recommendations, the government states which recommendations that were made, it accepts or it rejects. In the case of the Islamic Republic of Iran, as you know, the UPR, the working group was in October, but Iran decided not to delay or to postpone its decision on the acceptance or not of those recommendations. So this is a practice that is not the normal one. Other countries have done it, so we can't say that it's only Iran who has done that, but it's not the normal one. Finally, yesterday morning, so just 2 days before the UPR, we received this document that is available. It's on the website of the OHCHR, and which states which recommendations were accepted. As Hassan said, there were a number that were accepted. There were a number that were accepted with a caveat, and then there were a large number that were rejected. What we had done, what the Bahai international community had done at the first UPR of Iran, where a number of recommendations had been accepted that either mentioned the Baha'is by name, or that mentioned freedom of religion or belief, or that mentioned minorities, or that could apply to the situation of the Baha'is in one way or another. We took them and we reviewed their implementation or not in the past 4.5 years that Iran had made this commitment of UPR. And that's the booklet that Hassan referred to, which is called Unfulfilled Promises. If you come this afternoon, we will have copies for you, and it can be, we're having a side event ourselves, and if you come to it, we will have copies that you can for distribution. In this, unfortunately, we have noticed that Iran has not implemented one single of those recommendations, and that the situation of the Baha'is remain actually worse than what it was 4.5 years ago. So in fact, not only it has not implemented, there has been absolutely no improvement in those recommendations. This time, there were a large number of recommendations that mentioned ethnic and religious minorities, or that mentioned religious freedom. There were also 10 recommendations that actually specifically mentioned the situation of the Baha'is by name. In the document that we have received, we have seen that very few of the recommendations, the general recommendations that mentioned freedom of religion or belief, were accepted by Iran, and that out of the 10 recommendations that actually specifically mentioned the Baha'is, only 2 were partially accepted by the Islamic Republic. And I just want to go to what it means partially, because if you will see in the document, so Iran says that they accept a certain number of resolutions, and then they say that they accept partially a certain number of recommendations. What they say in this partially is that, in fact, those recommendations are so difficult to implement that it's going to take a long time for the government to be able to put them into practice, because it will have to go through various, I think it says, judicial authorities. Different constituent parts of the legislative process. And so therefore, they will have to pass new legislations, and they will have to take into consideration all the parts of governments and even non-governmental organizations, of which we have a few representatives in the room today. And that we hope that they will also help for Iran to implement those recommendations faster. we count on them since they're on the ground in Iran. So I think that this issue is a little bit worrying, because it means that basically it leaves the door open for finding all sorts of excuses for not implementing the recommendations, because it's no longer we accept them, but it's like, well, so it has a good side, if you will. It has a good side, which means that Iran actually recognizes that there's a problem, because if they didn't recognize that there was a problem, they wouldn't accept the recommendations. But on the other hand, they say, well, it's going to take a long time for these recommendations to be accepted. So I think that we at the Baha'i International Community understand that there are some issues that will take a long time. For example, as you know very well, the Iranian constitution only recognizes 3 religious minorities: the Christians, the Jews, and the Zoroastrians. So clearly, all those who are not named in the constitution, like the Baha'is, like the Yarsans, of course, they're not counted as a religious minority. However, and to change the constitution, of course, is not an easy task. This is something that we recognize, and this is something that we understand. But there are a lot of persecutions or discriminations against religious minorities. For example, if I take the case of the Baha'is, the access to university, which is not something that needs a change in the constitution. Actually, we know that the Baha'is are denied access, the Baha'i youth that are denied access to university are because they're identified as Baha'is through the pressure of some organs of the Iranian services that put pressure on the universities to either not allow the Baha'is to enter immediately. You know that this year, for example, a lot of Baha'is, although they had achieved very high degrees in the exam, in the concours, then they said your file is incomplete when they wanted to register to the university. But the file wasn't incomplete. The only problem of the fact that the file was incomplete was that they were Baha'is. So these are not things that require a lengthy change of or the other ones who are expelled are the ones who are at university, and once they're identified, so they do 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, and then once they're identified, they're expelled. So for example, this is not an issue that requires a long legislative process. It just requires that pressure that is put on the authorities of the universities, those secret circulars that are sent to them that say that if you identify a Baha'i, you should expel them, should be repelled. And because they're secret circulars, if they were secret ones, they can be also expelled without making such a big national, constitutional or legislative change. So I think that there are steps that can be taken, and we do hope that the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which claims a lot that they give a lot of importance to the UPR. You know very well that the Iranian delegation always said that we don't accept the special rapporteur, we don't accept the mandate of the special rapporteur, we don't accept country resolutions, but we think that UPR is a very good thing. So if they think that UPR is a very good thing, then it's time for the Iranian government to really fulfill its commitment and start moving on the recommendations that they have accepted, either fully or even partly. And then I think I want to say a final word on the recommendations that they have rejected. So Iran has rejected a number of recommendations, and they have given reasons for a number of them. The reasons that have given you will find at the end of the text. So some of them specifically address some of the recommendations and give an answer why they have been rejected. So I think that I will, some of them actually, none of them have to do with freedom of religion or belief, and none of them have to do with the Baha'is at all. So I will leave to colleagues to also elaborate on those. But basically, it is exactly like making reservations to the covenants. When Iran goes to it's not the case of Iran. When countries go to sign and ratify some of the conventions or covenants, they can also say what they actually make reservations on some of the parts of the covenant, which is not a good thing, but at least they have signed and ratified. So I think that we will also look at those recommendations that Iran has partially accepted as not a good thing, but at least better than rejecting them full-fledged. I would like to end saying that finally, just as Hassan said, the one thing that the Baha'i International Committee regrets is that some of the recommendations, so out of the 10 that mentioned the Baha'is, the 8 that were full-fledged rejected were actually excellent recommendations. And this is unfortunately also a sign that there is a lack of commitment on the part of the Iranian government to recognize that there are serious human rights violations in Iran, and particularly for religious minorities, and particularly for the Baha'is. And we hope that they will work at least on the ones that they accepted, so that maybe in 4.5 years, we will be able to start, rather than start again from scratch, which we did this time, start from one step above. Thank you.
ممنونم دایان عزیز از اطلاعات مشروعی که دادید.